In this video, we're going to answer the question, how can I compare fractions? If you remember, in class we talked about 4 different ways to compare fractions, so I'd like to model each of those ways for you so that you can choose which of those 4 ways would you like to use to compare fractions. For this example, we're going to be comparing the fractions, let's use blue, 3/4 and 2/6. So we need to compare those two fractions, see if they're greater than, less than, or equal to. One way to do that is to draw a picture. So if you want to, you can model both of those using circles or by using fraction bars. In either of those models, you would divide them into equal pieces. This one into 4 equal pieces, and then you'd shade 3 of them. And then here you would divide 4 equal pieces, shade 3 of them. Over here for the 6th, it's a little more tricky, but you can still divide it into 6 pretty equal pieces, shade 2 of them. Divide this into 6 pieces, shade 2 of them. When you look at those models, you can see that the 3/4 model is shaded more than the 2/6 model. So that shows us that 3/4 is greater than 2/6. So that was by drawing a picture or making a model. That's one way that you can compare two fractions. Another way to compare two fractions is to draw a number line. If I draw 2 number lines, they're both going to start at 0 and end at 1. In between, one of my number lines is going to be divided into 4 sections. So I have 0/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. So 3/4 would be at this spot. On my other number line, I'm going to divide it into 6 spaces. When I look at that and I count to 2/6, that would go right here. Now the dot that's closer to 1, 1's over here, 0's over there. The dot that's closer to 1 is going to be the number that's greater. So when I look at this, I see that 3/4 is closer to 1 than 2/6. So again, it shows me that 3/4 is greater than 2/6. So that was by drawing a number line. That's another way that you can see which fraction is greater or see how the two fractions compare to each other. Another way that we can compare fractions is by using common denominators. When I look at the number 4 and the number 6, I know that both of them can multiply to 12. So if I take 3/4 and I make an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 12, I would want to multiply the top and bottom of my fraction times 3, since 4 times 3 equals 12, and 3 times 3 equals 9. So 3/4 is equivalent to 9/12. In the same way, I could take 2/6, and I want a new equivalent fraction with a denominator of 12. This time I'd multiply by 2 over 2. 6 times 2 is 12, 2 times 2 is 4. When I look at those two numbers, I know that both of them are out of 12 equal pieces. So if I have 9/12, it's going to be more than 4/12. I just have more of the 12th pieces. So again, it shows us 3/4 is greater than 2/6. So that's by using a common denominator. When two fractions have the same denominator, you can look at the numerator, and the numerator that's greater is the greater fraction. The final way that we're going to compare fractions is by using benchmark fractions. Now this one is when we compare things usually to 1/2. So when I start with 1/2, I want to see if my number is greater than 1/2 or less than 1/2. So 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4, and 2/4 is less than 3/4. So when I look at this and I look at my fraction 3/4, I know that 3/4 is more than 1/2. 1/2 is also equivalent to 3/6, but 3/6 is greater than 2/6. This lets me know that 3/4 is more than 1/2 and 2/6 is less than 1/2. If I know that 3/4 is more than 1/2 and 2/6 is less than 1/2, then I know that 3/4 is greater than 2/6. Now, just like on the last test, you don't have to know how to use all of these strategies. You might use different strategies for different problems. You might decide which strategy works best for you or makes the most sense or is better for different problems. But I'm giving you all 4 of these strategies, drawing a picture, using a number line, using common denominators, using a benchmark fraction, so that you have as many tools as you can to be able to solve these problems with comparing fractions.